Let's get started. All right, welcome to the November 2025 edition of the McKinney Amateur Radio Club. Boy, we got a full house tonight. That is great. We need a quorum? I think we've got a quorum. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. You can be seated. Certainly today is Veterans Day, and I'd like to say Happy Veterans Day, but I don't know if that's really appropriate, because for some it's not a real happy day. But, thank you for everybody. Just as a show of hands, how many of you served in our military? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your service. All right, Jerry just gave me this to give to Dave Pekarsky. It's a $15 gift certificate for Kenny's Burger Joint for all the running he's had to do to pick up the parts. So there you go, sir. So I understand from my phone that we have a ham radio operator from the Philippines that's on Zoom. So that's pretty awesome. It happens to be my wife who's visiting family. So hello.
So that means you can draw tickets tonight.
Yes. All right. So Fox Hunters. Okay, Felicia the Fox. We did have Felicia up at the POTA event in October. So she generated a lot of hunters. For that, Felicia's been a little bit under the weather, so hopefully she'll get back out soon. Lance, you're kind of babysitting her right now. She's been asleep. Okay. She will get back out hiding at some point. Okay, next, please. All right, Steve the Fox. Good number of hunters there. So Steve is picking up a lot of traction. So thank you, John, for putting out Steve. And we do have a prize for the fox hunters. Awesome. All right, go one more slide. Marco the Fox. All right, is Todd here tonight? No? Okay, Marco is a new fox. He hangs around Melissa. So thank you for Todd for getting Marco together and out. If you've never been fox hunting, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of frustration too. But more than anything, it is fun. Once you get pick up the signal, you have to find the fox. It's almost an addiction. So we do have a prize, huh?
Movie tickets or Rosa Cafe.
Okay, your choice of a movie ticket or Rosa's Cafe. And you want me to draw?
Big one out there.
Okay. Okay, it is my wife, Melinda. No, okay. All right. I've got Kilo Phi Papa Alpha Victor Paul Vizard. Okay, all right. All right. So we'll give him a week to decide. Or a month. You're generous. All right, little Mark Funny.
Good evening. Oh, we're going to see if the clicker works.
It's not clicking.
Uh-huh.
Of course not. It's not just me then, right?
Nope.
I think it's pairing with the mic.
Did you do that or did I?
I did that.
Okay. So, we've talked about it a couple of times before, but we need some volunteers for the Santa Net, which will begin in the middle of December. We have the special event call sign, November 5 Papa, for 14 days, beginning on December 10th and running through December 24th. We are planning on having Santa or Santa's elves available between 6 and 8 p.m. evenings on the repeater. There's also an HF net that's operated by another ARRL organization, and I do plan on submitting our information for publication in the December QST. But I've spoke with Michael a little bit earlier this evening. He's going to help me get a sign-up sheet set up, and we will publicize that both in the next newsletter and it'll be available on our Discord. The idea is, go ahead, is to have Santa available, or Santa's elves available, to answer questions, take requests from children of other ham operators in the evenings for the 2 weeks prior to Christmas. And the plans to use the primary repeater, 146.740. There is, I think, one collision in there. No, because we backed off the time to 8 o'clock, we don't collide with any of the nets. We should be good. Next. And for tonight's presentation, we're going to go over the antenna test that was done this last weekend. We had several folks come out and set up a total of 8 different antennas for a field test. That's a pretty fair view here of what we've got. This one up front was a Delta loop, and then we've got a couple of POTA performers and a couple of other verticals. That was the only non-vertical antenna in the mess. And all performed quite admirably. We did learn that some antennas, you need to pay attention to their power limits. Go ahead to the next slide. The test that we did was designed to simply provide kind of an overview of what does SWR look like on this variety of antennas. And then we used FT8 as our transmission method. That way we could use any other FT8 station as a reverse beacon. So anybody that's operating FT8, if you're familiar with it, you probably know, but if you don't, an FT8 transmitting station, when it's receiving, automatically reports back to PSK reporter. It's a default setting in the software. So every station that you hear, it reports that, and it reports the signal level that it heard. So you get wonderful signal reports from all over the globe. So we did all of this up in Anna, just at Lance's, the community center near where he lives. And we had a lot of space. It was a beautiful day. It was a great time out there. Next. There we go. So once everything was set up, the first thing we did was test each of the antennas' SWR. I used a Rig Expert AA230 zoom to run a test specifically for the 20 meter band. All antennas were set up and tuned for 20 meters. So ideally, they should have already been set to get the best SWR that was available for them. But for some of these, that's not something that is necessarily measured every time. It's an approximation, particularly for things like the POTA Performer and some of the other compromise antennas that were there. But we took measurements at the lower band edge, the band center, and the upper band edge, and we also recorded the lowest point. Only in one situation was the lowest point not one of those 3 points. And then we tested performance, as I mentioned, using FT8 and using PSK Reporter as our reverse beacon network. Roger, KA5RBZ, was our operator for the day because my laptop didn't want to behave, and his worked flawlessly with the FT710 that we had on site. So thank you very much, Roger, sorry. And I misspelled his name on that slide. And basically the procedure was we would transmit CQ. We were not creating contacts. We weren't doing full QSOs. We were just transmitting CQ and then looking to the PSK reporter to see what our propagation out looked like. We did have one person who brought 3 different antennas, and so we used some substitute call signs for that, and we made some errors. So in our lessons learned at the end, we'll discuss some of that. but that made tracking some of that difficult. But the point was that we had a unique call sign per antenna so that we can keep track of all of that. It worked out very well for the vast majority of them. On each antenna, we transmitted for 3 consecutive staggered FT8 periods. So if you're familiar with FT8, it transmits for 15 seconds, waits and listens for 15 seconds, transmits again. So we did that over the course of a 90-second interval, transmitting 3 times to make sure that we got out there. And we were fairly consistent across all of the antennas to make sure we weren't giving a longer period of time for something to register. Reception logging, we used PSK Reporter while on site to give ourselves kind of a sanity check, make sure that everything was working well at that time. And then after the event, when I was back at home, I was able to pull those PSK Reporter graphs, as well as they let you download an ADIF log of everybody who heard you. So I pulled those down to get very specific stats. You'll see those toward the ends. Next. So these are the antennas that we had. The 8 antennas were the Delta Loop from Junior or Ambrosio, W4PTY. The My Go-To antenna, Radiodity antenna, and the one at the bottom, the Ultimax, were all from Chad, KJ5LVY. Jerry brought out her POTA Performer, as did Roger. And we had the Shelligance MC750 from Lance and a Yaesu ATOS 120 from Robert. The ATOS, in order to measure SWR, actually, there should be this should be the second slide. Go back one. There we go, that's better. The ATOS 120, because it is auto-tuned by the radio and not tuned individually, we attached the ATOS, let the radio tune it. Once the tuning stopped, then we disconnected it to measure the SWR, because the initial SWR was not appropriate for the 20-meter band. But these are the SWR measurements that we got on all of them. As you can see, more than half of them would have operated fine with most radios without any tuning. You could have operated just straight without having a tuner at all, but having the tuner in the FT710 made it a lot more beneficial, particularly for the ones that were 3.0 to 1 or above. And as I said, only the Yaesu had a minimum point that was not one of the start, middle, or end. And now you can go to the next slide. And this lets us see what kind of the summary of our results was. We operated as a standard using 100 watts out, and time was recorded in UTC, because that's what's recorded by the PSK Reporter. For the Radiodity antenna, we had a problem that we did not realize early on. That antenna is only rated for 20 watts. We were trying to feed it 100. Now, for a short period, that shouldn't matter a whole lot, but we're running digital, which is nearly 100% modulation. That's really hard. Well, what would happen is the moment that the signal hit the antenna, the laptop would shut down, the radio would lock in transmit mode, the output would shut off because the laptop would shut off output and throw an error coming from the radio. It did not like what the radio was telling it. So thankfully, we didn't harm the radio. We also didn't harm the antenna. But what we did end up with was no valid data for the Radiodity antenna. We did get valid data, but I didn't learn until today that there was a mistake in some of the transcription, and unfortunately, PSK Reporter only keeps the detailed data for 24 hours. And so I was not in time to capture the graph or the detailed data using Andy's call sign for the radiodity, which would have been the one run that was valid. And that run was at 25 watts. The My Go-To antenna was another one that we did have some challenges with. Again, we fed it 100 watts. It didn't like it. By then, we had figured things out. We dropped it down to 25. At 25 watts, we got 519 hits that were valid at that time frame. So, you know, when I look at the Ultimax, again, that 537 maps out to that 818 UTC time frame, and that was done with 100 watts on that antenna. The other one that we had to lower to 25 watts was the ATAS. The ATAS 120 would occasionally transmit at 100 watts, but it did not like it. Dropping that down to 25 made it reliable, and we got 267 spots on that one. Lance's Shelligans got 549, and we had 192 on Jerry's POTA Performer, and 446 on Junior's Delta Loop. All of those went very smoothly. No, not bad at all for 15 seconds. This is what the maps looked like, and as you can see, Jerry's POTA Performer, she got all the way over into Europe. My geography's not good enough, but we're way up north there. She got well into Alaska. When we look at the ATOS was pretty much limited to North America. We didn't quite hit Alaska, and we didn't hit South America, but we did hit a couple of the islands down around Cuba and Central America. And I don't know how many people there are listening after the hurricane last week. The Chalians from Lance made all of North America and a whole lot of Europe, and again, quite well up to the north. And then again, we used Chad's call sign for a number of different runs. So that's a composite, because by the time I was collecting these statistics, I couldn't filter the photo, the image. I was able to filter the text data that we used for the statistics on each individual antenna and map that by time. But if I could have limited this to, say, a 15-minute time window, I would have been able to give better graphs for that. Go on to the next one. And, oh, I duplicated it. One more. There we go. The last one was the map we got from Roger on his POTA Performer. And as you can see, he made it all the way up into Alaska. It's wrapped around on the right-hand side of the map, but all the way throughout Europe. And is that Japan? Yeah. He got the most distance contacts. Pardon? Oh yes, his was. You can look at the statistics, and all of this will be available later if you want to review this. But you can look at the statistics on how it was tuned. His was very well tuned to this band, and he's worked well at that. Good to the next one. Basically, all of the antennas performed well. This was meant to be a qualitative and learning experience to kind of see, based on, you know, what's it take to get set up, what's it take to tear down, how long does that take, and what kind of results do we get. But basically, even the simpler compromise antennas like the POTA Performer, all of the verticals that were put up were fairly easy to put up and down, and we all got great results from them. We did learn that some of them, you're not going to get 100 watts of digital through them, and that's to be expected. But if that's your goal, is to operate at 100 watts, that gives you some things to consider, and you can select based on that. Lessons learned. Well, one of our challenges in what we were doing, we thought we had identified a bad cable when we first encountered a shutdown because we were operating at 100 watts. We thought that cable was going to a very specific antenna, and we were wrong. And the cables weren't labeled at both ends. We had followed one wrong and we had it misidentified on the switch. So these were done in 2 groups of 4. I have a 4-port antenna switch, and basically we went from the radio to a bird watt meter to an antenna switch, and then we could select 1, 2, 3, 4, and very easily move from antenna to antenna. When we started having that problem, we then switched 2 ports. We thought we knew which 2 antennas we were switching. We were incorrect. That led us to a different problem. So again, lessons learned. Label all cables at both ends before you begin. Obey the power limits on your antenna. If you know that your antenna's got a power limit, don't try feeding it 100 watts of digital, because that's nearly 100% modulation. You're going to feed it a lot and it's not going to like it. When tuning an ATAS, be patient. Very, very patient. I did not realize it, but I mean, in the end, it took 5-ish minutes, maybe? It was a while, but we had other things we were doing at the time, so we were just able to wait for it. And again, sometimes a radio rated at 100 watts can put out a little bit more. We did find on 4 of those antennas that we were getting about 115 watts out of that FT710. And that was confirmed more than one way with the bird watt meter. Also, this past weekend, all the bands were marked as closed. We had just experienced a CME, and we're supposed to have, it was an R3 level, I think, interference storm. Nonetheless, you saw that we were getting most of the way around the world on the number of different antennas. And Jerry said, because we use sunscreen. And the other lesson is I should have taken more photos so that we had more examples of the individual antennas and things like that to show you. Any questions? Ron?
Yeah, for the verticals, was there any difference in the instructions on the height above ground to mount the antenna?
I don't know about difference in the instructions, and I didn't put any of the antennas up myself. They were all put up by the people who brought them. But they were all nearly mounted the same. They were all approximately 3 feet off the ground, which my understanding is a little bit over 6 is a little better, but I'm still playing and learning myself.
My go-to antenna was, it has about a, I guess about a 24 to 30 inch copper rod.
Uh-huh.
There's 2 of those on each end.
So the,
So then the shunt was actually about maybe 18 inches off the ground. But it had a 17-inch width, and then it had a, it's not really a counterpoise, but it's another that connects from the matching device over to the other copper rod that's 25 foot. So from what I've read about it, that is actually 17 foot plus 25. So it adds to the length of the width. So
interesting.
the radiality was about 4 foot off the ground with about a 12-inch width.
Yeah, I think your POTA, Jerry's POTA was about 4 feet up, 47 inches?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. I didn't remember.
Okay.
The only one, the Ultimax was 33 feet up, and it was at a slight angle.
33 inches up? Or do you mean 33 feet tall? 33 feet tall.
The feed in was about maybe,
Oh,
I don't know, how long was your curly cue thing, Gary? About
Oh, the curly thing, probably 3.5 feet.
3.5 feet, so it was on there.
Could you summarize what's
Gotcha.
being said?
say that again?
Could you summarize what is being said from the audience?
Oh, they can't hear him. Okay. He was talking about his My Go-To antenna, which is a 17-foot whip that's mounted with a 25-foot radial. And at least according to the manufacturer, those two add to each other in distance for how that behaves. And it's grounded in 2 different places. we'll have to get a little more information on that one. That's the My Go-To antenna.
Is that the My Go-To?
My Go-To, yeah. So that was not one I didn't kind of. Lewis?
I noticed that you had two quarter performers, but the amount of stations it was able to reach was about 50% difference.
Yep.
Any reason?
Lu- Lewis was saying that he noticed that we had two POTA performers and that there was about a 50% difference in the number of stations that they
11,
reached.
that's outside.
Each of them were assembled a little bit differently. The POTA performer is an antenna where you're given instructions of, here's a 17-foot mast, you extend it, and there's some iterative learning that you have to do. So you may have to take your antenna out, put up the mast, put up the radials. Now the radials, they give you some very specific formulas for how to get the radial length right for each band. When it comes to the mast, you're given an initial length, but if you do well, you put that up, you attach an SWR meter, and then try again, adjust the length, try again. We didn't do that. Well, Jerry assembled it and put it up the same way that she normally does for use on 20 meters. She has some things marked that works for her. If we spent some hours and did some measuring, we might be able to refine that. Roger has done that. He has refined his lengths significantly, and so you can even see that in the SWR on the two antennas. Jerry's is right around 3.0 to 1, and I believe Roger's was right around 1.5, 1.6 to 1. Did you have a question, Andy?
No, I was just gonna say that Roger's antenna was tuned closer to
Yes.
where it needed to be.
And yes, that's the other thing, is that Roger operates FT8 on a regular basis. So not only is his antenna more well tuned, it is tuned to the FT8 frequency. That is, he is specifically worked to get that working well.
And you know, Tim, we didn't think about it, but remember when the wind got Jerry's whip and it knocked it over?
Uh-huh.
It could have
Oh,
extended it out a little bit more.
that's right. There was a point where the wind picked up and Jerry's POTA performer was knocked over, and we had to add some ballast to the tripod to secure it. And when that got knocked over, that could have bumped it in, bumped it out, and affected that a little bit as well. So, but again, this was it was meant to be, what happens if I do my normal thing? Not all of these. If you spend some time with them, you can narrow that down. You know, when we first hooked up the ATAS, we were getting approximately 3.5 to 1. I don't know exactly where it was tuned, but it was close to the 20-meter band. Okay, so it would have been the upper end of the 20-meter band. Right. So, true, the ground plane was different than what it was on your truck. And so once we had it there, we ran in fact, the first time we ran the tune, it didn't run. And so we attached two more ground leads to it and reran it. And we also didn't wait very long the first time, so that might have been it. But that made a huge difference. And once it was tuned, our best point was 1.13 to 1 at about 14.132. So just a little bit high for FT8. Did you have another question?
Yeah, you gonna do part 2, another one?
I hope so.
I would say yes, we're going to do another one. I don't know exactly when, probably springtime. But because I have some plans on my own antennas, I have all of my pieces for my POTA performer and a few other things I want to get lined out first. But then I want to go to a nice big field and play with it. And I may do some of that during winter field day as well.
Good antenna site.
It is a beautiful antenna site. It was big. It was big and open. If we wanted to space them out, the biggest challenge would have been getting cables to them. That was the other thing, is in order to make all of this as consistent as possible, there was one radio, one feed line, and 1 meter between the radio and the switch. And the switch fed every antenna from a 50-foot RG8X. 3 of the 4 RG8X feed lines were from the 3 Go kits. So they were purchased at the same time from the same manufacturer. We tried to make that as stable and consistent as possible so that we didn't have losses there unaccounted for separate from the antennas. We wanted this to truly be a test of the antenna system, not all the various components that you can have if I set up 14 radios in a field. Any other questions?
I was just gonna ask how the ATAS was mounted. It wasn't on a vehicle, it was on a.
Right. Rob was asking how the ATAS was mounted. It was mounted on a spike, on a tripod, okay, that had, I think, 4 ground radials when we finally had it laid out. And that was it. It was about 18 inches off the ground, give or take. Anything else? All right. Back to you, Robert.
All right, thank you, Tim. Yeah, that was a very, very informative, educational event. And I think, Chad, if I remember right from the slides, one of your antennas was straight across 3.4 SWR, but it managed to get the most contacts. So SWR isn't everything, guys. Okay, that's not exactly, everybody has the SWR derangement syndrome or something like that. They want the perfect SWR. That's, yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. But, okay. Next. All right, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you for your service if you're a veteran. See you tomorrow at Chipotle, guys. All right. So we need a motion to adjourn unless y'all want to spend the night. All right, Dave. What's that? What? Okay. I know. KI5 LPO. Okay, we need a second. Larry, KI5 OEZ. Larry. All right. Any discussion? Anybody opposed? All in favor? All right. Any opposed? Let's go home.